Hey guys, welcome back to Classic G-Body Garage. My name is Brian, and this video is part 2 of the Save the G-Body series that we did with Pull Apart Used Auto Parts. Frank and I traveled down to their Louisville, Kentucky location where we saved this 1986 Olds Cutlass from the crusher. Now the whole purpose of this venture is to go through this car top to bottom, front to back, and find out exactly what it needs to get it running and back on the road where it belongs. Now in part 1, we check out its overall condition from the exterior, the interior, and under the hood to find out what parts we could scavenge from a Monte Carlo that was also in the yard that could be used to help us out in the process. Now we brought this Cutlass to a local Classic G-Body Garage member shop called Blind Fury Headquarters. Since we're going to be in town anyways, we decided to do a little bit of wrenching there. Now we did get the car running after a little bit of work with a steering column change, an oil change, a few other odds and ends, and some fresh gas down the car. Alright, that's all we need.
Dude, that thing sounds great.
It does. That's all we need. Since we were only there for a few hours, we did make a lot of progress, but we did load the car back on the trailer, headed back to Classic G-Body Garage where we continued the work here. So make sure you check out part 1 of this series to bring yourself up to speed. Now we have a ton more work to do on this Cutlass to get it roadworthy, so consider subscribing, hit that bell, of course give us a thumbs up, and enjoy the video. Alright, we got the gas tank out, and is with part of the processing service that they do with these cars with extracting all of the fluids out of them. One of them is gouged in the gas tank, and that's exactly what they did on this Cutlass. So they put a big slit in here. I'm guessing they do that with the forks. They just puncture the tank and let all the gas out of it. As you saw earlier, they pop a hole in that transmission pan, so we replaced that. They just drain the oil out of it with the drain plug so they don't pop the pan, the oil pan, which is good. So got the old gas tank out. It's unfortunate that it did get popped because overall it's in really good shape. Top of it, I mean, it still has its original stickers on it. So I'll probably pull this sending unit out of here, drop it in a different tank. The tank that we pulled out of the Monte Carlo, it does have a decent sending unit as well, but we'll take a look at this one potentially. Don't know. We'll get to I'll let you know when we get to that point. And we have Frank here under the hood, putting the, there we go, brand new mechanical fuel pump in, getting that all hooked up, bolted up. So things are looking good underneath there as well. Alright, I have the sending unit pulled out of the Monte Carlo tank and also out of the original Cutlass tank. And I wanted to remove the one out of the Monte Carlo tank because that one only had a 2-line sending unit where the Cutlass has a 3-line. It has a return line. And when I pulled the sending unit out of the Cutlass, I found that the fuel sock was missing off of it. So I yanked the one off of the Monte Carlo. I'm going to fit it onto the one with the Cutlass with the 3 lines. And then I'm going to put it back in the tank as well and get the tank then put back into the car. But something that we learned is I think the fuel sock was removed because as these people were chasing fuel source issues where they had this electric fuel pump underneath the car placed in the wrong place, and they had another one under the hood which is also in the wrong place. So they were chasing fuel issues with this car and they wanted to remove the sock. They thought that maybe that was restricting it. And then we also found out when we're putting the fuel pump on the car and the fuel line. Well, there is a filter right here in this fitting. There's a filter right there, or should have been a filter. There was not a filter in place, so they also removed that because they probably thought that that was restricting flow as well. But went ahead and put a new seal on the housing, put a new filter in there, ran another fuel line because they had hacked apart the original fuel line to get those electric fuel pumps in place. We removed the AC compressor just to access everything now a lot easier, get some new rubber lines on there. And Frank went ahead and pulled some bracketry, bolts and spacers that were missing off this AC compressor setup from one of my parts cars. So we'll get this all buttoned up, put back together the way it should be. Alright, so the gas tank is in, the fuel pump is in. Filled the gas tank just now, as you saw, and I think we're just about ready to turn the key. We added coolant in it, got to prime the carburetor, and we'll see what happens. We got a couple gallons of gas in the tank, and hopefully it's enough to get pumped up into the carburetor here. See what happens. Hold on one sec.
You got it.
I'll let you turn the key.
Let me know when you're ready.
Go ahead. Hold on. So let's start it right away. A lot quicker than I thought it would, but then again we did prime the carburetor, so it is going to start fast. But it sucked the gas from the tank really quick with that brand new fuel pump. She's running pretty smooth. Running pretty smooth. It is leaking gas, I can see it. So let's tighten up the gas line. How's it sound back here?
Sounds alright.
All right, so hey, it runs really good actually. Now the next step, we got to work a couple bugs out of it. It has a a gas leak at the fuel line, so we might have to put some thread tape around there. So we don't want to run it too long, but we do want to find out if the car will move and stop as well. And one of the steps in the process of processing these cars before they go out into the yard at pull apart is they suck all the fluids out. As you saw, that we replaced the gas tank because it had a hole in it, the trans pan, which we do have to top off the transmission fluid, but the brake fluid has been completely sucked out of it. When we did have it running, it did look like the brake light was not on the dashboard, and I do see some fluid down in here. So hopefully I'll just be able to, or have to top it off. I wiped all the old dirt out of it. Hopefully we just need to top it off and don't have to rebleed the entire system. No brake light on the dashboard. Brakes feel firm too. Looks like that gas gauge is working. It has about an 1/8 tank. I'm gonna put it in gear. Oh. It stalled it. You might have to turn up that idle. Wheels turning?
We're turning.
Alright, so the fluid's pretty good now. It's a little bit low, but I don't think it's completely all the way up to temperature. So we'll get it back down on the ground. We'll back it out of the garage and see if it moves. All right, so the brakes work. They feel good. The car seems to be running good. So just about to pull out on the street, and I'm just gonna run it up and down the street. My street's a couple miles long. I'll go back and forth. We'll come back, check the fluids, make sure we're good before we take it completely around the block. We'll make sure it is in good running order, doesn't leave me stranded. Here we go. Oh, shifted to second finally. It's a long first gear. We don't have much gas. Hit third, hit third. Wow, it's still hanging in second gear. So it's not shifting to third gear. It's hanging up in second gear. I wonder if I'm in. Nope, that's neutral. So it won't shift to third gear. So I don't know if it's low on fluid or the TV cable needs to be adjusted. So we only have first and second gear, which is pretty unfortunate. And first gear really lasts a long time. So it could be an adjustment on the kickdown or the TV cable. But we're gonna have to figure that one out. Otherwise, it seems to be okay. It's smooth. Brakes work nice. So I'm going to go ahead and turn around and head back. Transmission's bothering me a bit. Who knows? Maybe that's the reason why it was junked. The transmission may have had a problem. gonna have to check the adjustment on that TV cable just to make sure that we are in good shape there before I drive it any further. But so far so good. I'll go ahead and check the fluid because I just topped it off to the point where it was in good shape, but the car wasn't completely warmed up. So we'll go ahead and check the fluid, make sure we're good there. We'll take it up and down the street again. Well, we are now up on jack stands, and I'm pretty sure I know the reason why this Cutlass ended up at pull apart. But before I get into that, let me explain how we got to this point. Now, when I pulled the car back in the driveway, I checked the fluid level for the transmission and checked out perfectly. Up to operating temperature, fluid level is exactly where it needed to be. So, went ahead and checked the TV cable because I thought maybe the TV cable was out of adjustment based on how it was shifting. It had those prolonged shifts. It wouldn't shift into third. Checked the cable, found out the cable was loose. I thought, hey, great. Let me go ahead and adjust this thing up nice and tight. Went to adjust it, found out the adjustment was pulled back as far as it can go. No room left for adjustment. So, put the car up on jack stands because I wanted to find out what was going on with the other end of this cable that goes down inside the transmission. Well, here it is, guys. This here is the infamous TV cable, which is essential to the transmissions that are in these G-bodies. Now, these G-bodies came with a couple different types of transmissions. They had the TH350, which is the turbo 350 3-speed, which has a cable like this, but it's used primarily for kickdown. But on the metric 200 3-speed automatic and the 204R transmission, they use what's called a TV cable or a throttle valve cable. One end hooks to the carburetor, the other end hooks down inside the transmission. When you hit the gas, moves the cable, the other end of the cable pushes a plunger inside the transmission, which is the throttle valve, which helps build pressure inside the transmission. If this cable is not adjusted properly, which so many people fight to adjust with or mess with to get proper adjustment, that plunger is not moved properly, which doesn't build proper pressure in the transmission, and therefore you can risk burning it up if you put a lot of miles behind it, which I think that was the case with this one. But before that, I pulled the pan off, and when I pulled the pan off of the transmission, I wanted to take a look to see if there was anything goofed up inside, because this cable is all busted up on this thing. The sheathing is broken out of it, the cable is all frayed, and I thought, you know what, I'll pull the pan off of it, take a look inside. Found out that the throttle valve itself lost its spring tension. I think the spring inside the valve body broke. Someone pulled on this cable to get proper adjustment to make up for that slack that they found on that valve inside the transmission, and ended up adjusting it too tight and broke the cable. Well, with the cable broken like this, it's the same thing as the cable being out of adjustment. And when I pulled the pan off of the transmission to replace it, because pull apart had a hole punched in it, I found all sorts of residue inside of it. The filter was all messed up as well. I thought maybe, you know what, let's go ahead, change out the pan, because we had to do it anyways. Replace the filter, gasket, get some fresh fluid in it, take it down the street, find out if the transmission works, of course. Found out that it didn't shift properly, found out the cable was broken, up on jack stands, and guess what, guys? I'm not taking any more chances with this transmission, and especially with that throttle valve spring being broken. This transmission is done, and out it comes. Alright, so the transmission's out. That wasn't too terrible of a job, considering half the bolts, or pretty much all the bolts, were loose. All the bolts for the bell housing and the rear mount were loose. The only bolts that were significantly tight were the torque converter bolts, which of course are as important as everything else. But take a look at what I found written on the torque converter on this transmission. Now, I did mention, or at least I had the hunch, that the transmission has been out of this car at one point in time. Considering all the bolts being loose, I found a ground cable that's supposed to attach to the bell housing was not hooked up, and also the transmission dipstick tube was not bolted down either. So a lot of signs led me to believe that the transmission has been out of this car at one point in time. There's a date on here, 10/13/2014, PT number, maybe part number, I'm not sure. Look at this, little evil face, POS, piece of yit. So that goes to tell you that the transmission they put in this car may have come out of another junkyard car, a parts car had been sitting around in a garage. Who knows? But the transmission was probably on its way out. They shoved it in this car and maybe sold it to the person who got the car, ended up scrapping it because the transmission let go. Who knows what the case may have been? But that is the story with this transmission, and that is proof that I'm happy that I've made the decision to pull this one out of here and not try to mess with that valve body, TV piston, or the TV cable. So transmission's out. Let's find out what car I'm going to use to donate its transmission to put back into this car. This is a 1979 Cutlass Calais T-top. I bought this car several years back with plans to restore it. It does have a good transmission in it. Now, I did drive the car up and down the street when I first got it about 5 years ago. I am going to fire it up now and take it up and down the street because it does have brakes, and I want to make sure the transmission does run through its gears. That will help me determine if the transmission's good, but it is the same transmission that was in the 86. The only difference is the kickdown cable and throttle bracket setup is different. That concerns me just a bit, but I think I can get it going. So I did put a battery in this car. It's been sitting here for about 6-8 months. This car is an absolute disaster. Let's see if it fires up. It was stall. It fired up fairly quick. Sure has a loud lifter tick. But it fired up. We'll let it run. We'll let it warm up. I'll back it out into the driveway. We'll check the transmission fluid and we'll take it down the street and make sure the transmission works. All right, here we go. Got the fluid topped off in the transmission. Car seems to be running decent. I put a little bit of gas in it. See if it shifts through the gears. First and second is okay. Boy, this old 260, barely hanging on. Third gear at 50 miles an hour, but it did shift through all of its gears. All right, let's get this thing turned around. I don't even like driving this wreck. I think this is the only second time I've driven this car. And the brakes are hanging up bad. Woo, they smell bad. The brakes are hanging up. Let me see if it'll downshift. There it goes. Kick down at first. Second. All right, so the kick down works too. Everything seems to work good on this transmission. Let's get it back in the drive and figure out what to do next. Yeah, I think that brake caliper's hung up. Thing's smoking like crazy. I called a couple friends over to help me drop the trans out of the 79 and swap it into the 86. Now, I didn't film the process because we're dodging rainstorms and wanted to get the job done with minimal disruption. We managed to get the trans in place in just a few hours and slapped a classic GBody garage decal on the converter in the process. Alright guys, well, the transmission out of the 79 Cutlass is now installed in the 86. Now, there is a pretty large span of years there, and you might ask yourself, are the transmissions any different? Well, they really aren't. Now, they're both TH200 metric 3 speeds, and the two major differences are the TV cable is a little bit different, being that the fact that the 79 has a slide hookup, where the 86 has a plastic snap-on hookup. And then the second difference is the 86 has a lockup torque converter where the 79 does not, but that's not a big deal. Just pulled the harness from the lockup torque converter up from underneath the car, tucked it up neatly underneath the hood here. It's not going to be needed. It's not going to hurt anything. But everything is in place. Bell housing bolts are tight. I did have to put a brand new rear transmission mount in it. Trans lines are hooked up, of course, tight. Speedometer cable brackets in place. That was not in place before. Got the ground cable in place and the dipstick tube in place. So many things were left undone on this car, whoever put the transmission in this car. So honestly, I'm kind of glad all this happened because that really just wasn't a safe deal there. So the car is back down on the ground and we're about ready to turn the key, get this thing fired back up, top the fluid off, and find out if this 86 will go down the road and shift through all 3 gears. All right guys, well, we're gonna find out if this car runs through all 3 gears with normal driving, because when this car went down the street with the old transmission, it would not shift out of 2nd gear, and when it shifted out of 1st gear, it shifted at near 50 miles an hour, so that is not right. So let's see what it does. Second at 30. That's good news. Hit 3rd. Come on, hit 3rd. 3rd at 45. It's working. It's working. And it's staying. It's staying in 3rd. So far, it's cruising pretty nice. Cruising at 45 miles an hour in 3rd gear. No problem. We'll let this thing get up to proper temperature. We'll turn it right back around. We'll check the fluid. Make sure we're in good shape there. And we'll see if we have any leaks. All right guys, so I have a little confession to make here, and it happens to be with continuing to live and learn when working on cars. And you think I'd know by now, based on how many transmissions I've swapped in these G-bodies or cars in general, and that is always replace the torque converter seal when you swap a transmission, unless, of course, it was already replaced if you had the transmission rebuilt. But in my case, I should have replaced that seal when I had that transmission out of the 79 Cutlass and put it in this car. And that is because the time you saw me driving this car for the first time after the transmission swap, and this time right now, several weeks have gone past. And that's because I ended up doing a whole lot of work to this car in between that time. Started off with pulling the transmission back out of this car, because when I drove the car 20-25 miles with that initial transmission swap, need a seatbelt, I brought the car back home and took a look underneath to see if there was any leaks, and it looked like someone was pouring a quart of transmission fluid on the ground. And what happened was that seal let loose, fortunately, in my driveway, or it would have left me stranded. So guess what I had to do? I had to pull the transmission back out of it, replace that seal, and get it back in this car. So now I'm driving the car again. I put about 300 miles on this car since that last transmission swap, or swapping it for the 2nd time after replacing that seal. And after replacing that seal and getting that transmission back in this car, I made sure the car was good to go from a driveline perspective. Put maybe about 100 miles on it, and wanted to make sure that the car was still good to go with the brakes, with the electrical work. But as I found out as going through this car, it needed some brake work. Had to put front brake hoses on it because the hoses were very poor condition, most likely being original, and they had some severe cracks. Of course, that's a safety concern. Replaced those. Brakes were good to go. Found out that once driving the car at night, none of the dash lights worked. The cluster lights didn't work. The HVAC lights, the glove box lights, nothing worked other than the interior lights. Those did work. And then also the exterior lights needed a whole lot of work as well. Headlights, turn signals, backup lights didn't work. The brake lights had some really funky stuff going on. Steering wheel, you can see it's different. It had a Monte Carlo SS column in it. I swapped it over to Cutlass shifter, levers, and all that. Put the Cutlass steering wheel back on it. And like I said, I put about 300 miles on the car since all this work. Now, why did I do all this work? Well, first off, I wanted to save this car because it was turned in at pull apart. So wanted to get this car completely up and running with no problems so I can daily drive it. It's proven itself as a daily driver, racking up about those 300 miles. It's been a great car. Just cruising it right now, actually for the very last time, because what we've decided to do with this car here at Classic GBody Garage is this car is actually proven itself so well as we ended up giving this car away at the 5th annual GBody Classic, which is an annual car show that I hold every year at Pull Apart. This car will be given away, title handed over, keys handed over tomorrow, day after this, driving this car, and it'll be off to the new owner. And I want you guys to post a comment as well to let me know how you felt this entire project went, saving this GBody, going through it, transmission, brakes, electrical. A lot of work was done to this car, a lot of hours have been put into it, all to give it away at the Classic GBody 5th annual GBody Classic, and it all went down really, really great. I couldn't have asked for something better to happen for the new owner. Very excited to hand these keys over, and yet again we save another GBody with the help of Pull Apart, just like the Scrap National as well. So this car will this car will continue to live on the other side of the scrapyard fence and get loved by another GBody owner, which is really cool. So looking forward to giving those keys up, and I'm just going to enjoy myself driving this car around the town for the very last time. Alright, hey guys, this is Brian from Classic GBody Garage. I got Hiram here and Ty. Hiram is the one who won the 86 Cutlass at the 5th annual GBody Classic, and right when he won it, he generously gave it to Ty as a gift. First off, congratulations.
Thank you.
And Ty, congratulations
Thank
as well from Hiram. So what's your plans with the car?
Really, just paint it and cruise. That's what we're going to do.
So I went through the whole car. I don't know if you guys saw the videos, but went through the whole car. It's got a new tank, fuel pump, brakes, all the electrical's been redone and everything. So the car is ready to go. I put 350 miles on it without any issue. So the car's good to go. You know what? Here we go. Hand the keys off. Here you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
The keys. Congrats once again.
Thanks.
I appreciate it, and I want to thank Pull Apart.
You're welcome.
Yeah, true friend right there.
And got the GBody emblem. There you go.
There we go.
Never forget it. Yeah, with a t-shirt.
Oh yeah, t-shirts are in the car. Here, let me real quick. Got t-shirts and stickers for you. Who wanted the green?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
There you go. T-shirts, get them swagged up.
There you go.
And I also want to thank Pull Apart for helping us out as well. Congratulations once again, guys. Got yourself a Cutlass.
Thank you.